Hello and welcome to Tanchaz Talk, the world's only English language program focusing primarily on Hungarian folk music. My name is Kalman Magyar Öcsi, and I'm speaking to you today from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, telling you some stories and playing some music today in an episode that I've titled So Close Yet So Far. And today I'll be talking about cities or villages or regions that are geographically quite close to each other, but for various reasons that we can either establish for sure or just hypothesize about, they're very different in terms of their dance or music culture and even some of their language. And that's why I've titled this episode So Close Yet So Far. We're going to take a look at a few groupings of interest here, but there are many other examples out there. These reasons that exist might be economical, the geographical, migratory, social, political, even sometimes force majeure, some kind of natural disaster that occurs that really separates these places that might be otherwise very close. They make them quite differently in terms of the way. We're going to look obviously just at the music today. Now, I'd like to invite you, before I go on further, to subscribe to the podcast, Tanchaz Talk Interviews. In fact, the more you listen to those interviews, the more this one might make sense, because I'll be referring to some of the past interviews I've already posted there with some of my wonderful guests that we've actually talked about some of these places. I like to get the show started right away talking about the formerly known as the city, now we more refer to it as a village of Szék, which is in Transylvania, in the Mezőség region. We're listening to Adam István and his band. That's Ichan, that's his nickname. And it's a string trio of a violin, the flat string viola, the Transylvanian viola, and the cello, literally a cello, not a bass there, but a cello. That's the traditional trio setup. Now, Szék is situated in Kolozs County, in Kolozs County, Romania, and it once was a booming metropolis. And why? Well, because they had salt mines there since the Middle Ages. So it became a very valuable treasure of the royalty, and the place is a business center. And that's how we got various types of people in Szék: Hungarian ethnicities, Romanian ethnicities, and the famous Saxons, the Germanic people, who were installed there mostly to work by the Habsburg royalty. This is, of course, the Csárdas from Szék. Szék was the first place where the first Tancházes were held across the years. Of course, before the Táncház movement, when people got together to dance at either the cultural center or various people's homes, they called that the Táncház. Hey, where's the Táncház? Well, it's here and there. So let's go to the Táncház, literally meaning the dance house. Now, I'm not a historian nor an ethnomusicologist, so if you're really interested to hear from a historian or ethnomusicologist, we can certainly go there in a later episode. So I'm kind of giving you just a 30,000 foot overview here, but Szék was pretty much almost destroyed by the Tatar, the Mongol invasion, the second Mongol invasion in the 1700s. The city was nearly completely destroyed, the population decimated, but it was rebuilt. There's also a plague around that time as well, but the city was kind of revitalized. But eventually, in the 1800s, the salt mines kind of came to an end and dried up, and that was the end of Szék as a big booming metropolis or city. So the Hungarians stayed there, and we had the Saxon influence, even though now it kind of became a village of sorts. Szék did. We have these various ethnicities which collided there, and to make this wonderful potpourri of their dances. And of course, we have the dance cycle in Szék, which has the men's dance and the couples dances, and we have the Renaissance-based. If you listen to Kalman Magyarszovát's quick history lesson in one of the early, actually the first interview I did with him. This is the dance of the Renaissance. That's the Csapdás, and then we also have later on some dances which we'll hear next. Actually, the négyes, they also call that the Magyar, the foursome dance, and the very Saxon influenced polka and seven-step, polka és hétlépés. Listen to this wonderful attack, though, of the violin of Ichan. Very dramatic playing. Notice how he utilizes the silence to his benefit here. Nice key change there. Famous vastag huros. Pizzicato there with the left hand. So let's listen to the négyes as well, which is the foursome dance. This is actually very rare in the Hungarians dancing. We have something that's actually a little asymmetrical. It sounds like a 2/4 or a 4/4, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, but it's not. Listen closely. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. The 2 and the 4 are a little delayed, and that's how you dance this as well. In the 1940s, a gentleman called László Lajta collected music from Szék and dances from Szék, and then he notated them. And of course, when you listen to Levente Székely interview I did on Tanchaz Talk interviews, the podcast, you will hear him talk about trying to read this and performing. And Kunse Arpi's father said, "Hey, nice job, guys. That sounded really horrible." Well, they were, of course, trying to read the notes and play this. How can you do that? Listen to the richness here of the dynamics, the trills, the work of the bow hand, everything going on. course, you could imagine Levente goes on to tell the story that they went to actually to the like the Folk Institute in Kolozs to listen to the field recordings, and then it made sense. The written notes made sense in terms of, okay, forget the notes, let's just play it as we hear it. That's the essence of folk music. And now I'd like to play an example of what I mentioned before, the polka and hétlépés, the polka and a hétlépés, the 7-step from Szék. This is a nice one. Dancers are listening out there. This is a very, very fast and quite long polka already. It's the old classic. Probably the best example of the Saxon Germanic influence of those people that were sent there to work and stayed there and melded into the community. They were Saxons that were working like the salt mines of Szék. Now I'm going to take you, it's probably about 20 kilometers away, to a place called Bonchida. Now Bonchida is quite different in terms of its music, and dance, and singing. And there's a good reason for that. the Bonchida is the home of the Banfi Castle, which is where the Hungarian royal family, the Banfi family, lived, and for centuries. These guys had tons of money, obviously, and they were royalty in that area, and they had different style, different tastes, and lots of money to pay for very sophisticated, educated musicians or teachers to train the local musicians. And all of a sudden, just from, really, it's a bike ride away or a long walk away, 20 kilometers, you get a completely different sound, completely different setup. Listen and hear them. This is, by the way, the Öcsi band playing from the Bonchida 3x CD with Balogh Kalman on the cimbalom. So you have the late Öcsi Csaba playing the lead with Molnár Miklós on the second violin, cimbalom, viola, and the bass. Berec András.
Babájától elbúcsúzik, aki a polcsaj vizet viszik, a babájától elbúcsúzik. Nem úgy van most, mint volt régen, nem az a nap süt a régen, nem az a nap csaj, nem az a hold, nem az a szeretőm hív. Nem az a nap csaj, nem az a hold, nem az a szeretőm hívott, aki volt már régen vagyok. Szebbre vágyott minden vagyok, szebbre vágyott, hely, de nem kapott, még olyat sem minden vagyok. Szebbre vágyott, hely, de nem kapott, még olyat sem minden vagyok.
So just a few miles or kilometers away from Szék, you have a whole different setup. You have money, you have a royalty, Western thinking royalty, who are bringing in musicians from Austria and from Germany and from Italy to train and to play for the local royalty at the castle, at these parties. Franz Joseph, the emperor, of course, is coming to visit as well, and everyone's there. And the local musicians are coming. The local gypsy musicians from Bonchida, learning from these Western musicians, and that's how you get these dynasties. That's how you get musicians who can hear a minor key and can accompany it, for instance, on the viola and on a cimbalom, a very classical instrument. They can accompany these tunes, for instance, in a minor key, even though in most of Mezőség we don't play anything even though the melody might be in minor key, the accompaniment always remains in major. This makes Bonchida very special. This is really a financial, call it political reason, for perhaps, why this Bonchida is a planet of its own, just like Szék is, but they're about 20 kilometers away from each other. Listen to this beautiful playing. This tune we just heard in Szék as well, but this is a different take. Banfi Castle is still there in Bonchida, and it's really close to Kolozs. So if you're ever in Cluj or Kolozs in Romania, Transylvania, go visit. It's gorgeous. The great thing about this CD, they took Hungarian and Romanian and Gypsy music as well, and all combined it, which is why it's called Bonchida háromszor, Bonchida 3 times. Beautiful. Now, guess where we're going? That's right, Ördöngösfüzes. Again, this is about 20 kilometers away from Szék and Bonchida, but here you get the very, very mezőség sound. Whatever that means. Ördöngösfüzes is a very ethnically rich area, or rich city as well, and it's very interesting there. They call it a slower csárdas cigánytánc, so the gypsy dance, and then they call this, what we're listening to, is csárdas, and then they call the fast part, which we'll hear later, zsidó tánc, the Jewish dance. So these people really coexisted peacefully together in this really, remote type of village, a very typical, mezőség village. It's in the northern part though, and the music is a little different than what we might hear in Keszű, mezőkeszű, or Magyar Palatka, or Visa. What really jumps out at me here is they retained a lot of these old songs, like in Ördöngösfüzes and Búza. We still have these kind of old songs which are not necessarily tied to the nota, where Magyar Palatka you get a lot of that. And these are really cool songs, and a lot of hits in the last few decades have come out of this area. This was an interesting CD Fono put out. It's called Szerda. And on Wednesday nights they had like a dance. They still have dance workshop series taught by various professional dancers. And at the culmination, they kind of had a big Táncház, and I think Péter Árendás was the ringleader on this series. And on this CD they have a Magyarszovát and Ördöngösfüzes, both. It's a really nice CD, and so they're all playing live, all these musicians and dancers. Same melody as before. Now you have the bass, but we're back to the 3-string contra. So we have, it's kind of like Szék, kind of like Bonchida, but not really. And these three villages, very close to each other, all have a very unique, different sound, and especially on the dancing, of course, is quite different. Melodies, a lot of them are found all over Mezőség, and they would equally fit in most any cycle in Mezőség, but except of course Bonchida and Szék, and this is one of the great tunes from that area. There we have it. That's Szék, Bonchida, and Ördöngösfüzes, so close yet so far. I'd like to play another example of this. These might be a different reason. Of course, we don't have this this kind of financial reason or backing to explain the differences. This is more geographical. Let's go to Kolozs, which is not far from where we are. This is a kind of a small region that we don't hear much about. It's a commune or a series of villages, and Kolozsbos, Kolozskara, Cserealja, and some others. And this is, of course, close to Kolozsvár as well. This is Tükrös playing. This music went on the Ami Mezőségünk, Mezőség CD, but it's actually not quite Mezőség. It's its own little region called Kolozs. And listen to this. Very Kalotaszeg sounding, one can say. Kolozs region, mini region. It's quite similar to Kalotaszeg. Their dancing is a bit different as well, and the music style is a bit different as well, although it's very, very similar to the ear to Kalotaszeg. two contras collaborating. You have a 4-string and a 3-string, and one is playing kind of a fast legging-ish, and the other one's playing offbeats. Pa, 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 pa. Listen closely. Hearing this melody over and over, the Vastag Huros, don't we today? This music's inclusion on Tükrös's Mezőség CD was, of course, highly qualified. The name of the track is called Kakuk Tojás, which translates as the odd one out, the odd man or odd woman out. Let's say the odd one out, which kind of acknowledges that it's kind of Mezőség, kind of Kalotaszeg, it's somewhere in the middle, but its own region. So it's included properly with a good qualifier. Let's go about this is as the crow flies, it's probably about 15 kilometers away where we're going next. Magyarszovát. Different world, dude. Different world. Listen to that. This is the home of Pap István Gázsa, of course, if you were paying attention during Levente Székely's interview. Magyarszovát is really Mezőség sounding, but what's going on here? Why is it only 15 kilometers away as the crow flies from Kolozs, but sounds very like Mezőség, you know, more like Ördöngösfüzes, for instance, or Magyar Palatka. Well, the crow doesn't fly there. We don't travel by crow. We travel by foot, or back in the old days by horse. And what's happening here is there's a large mountain range. Of course, it's very hilly, mountainous in that area, and you have to get over the mountain. So this is a topographical, really a geographical topography issue we're dealing with here, because Kolozs is kind of facing to the west towards Kalotaszeg in the way northwest, but Magyarszovát is facing the other way, the Mezőség way, so to speak. And now, so you have a real cut in the different styles and dancing, but that's caused by the topography, the geography. Listen to this, how Mezőség we're getting now. Of course, you could hear the dueling contras, the duo of the three-string of violas, just like we hear in other parts of Mezőség. First grouping of examples here, we've had Szék, Bonchida, and Ördöngösfüzes, so close yet so far. And this is pretty striking too. The second grouping we had Kolozs and Magyarszovát. Again, you know, geographically, as the crow flies, quite close, 15 kilometers away, about 15 kilometers away, but really different planets in terms of the music and the dance. Now, let's go over to Hungary. Sounds Scandinavian, but this is from the village of Méhkerék. We're listening to the Croz Brothers CD called Ketten, the two of us. These are the leaders of the Duvő group, Croz Dénes and Croz Somogy, playing beautiful music from Méhkerék, which is from southeastern Hungary. Méhkerék was or is just a few miles from the Romanian border down there in Békés County, in the I call it the Alföld, the Great Plains of Hungary, but still on the Hungarian side. So what's going on here? what's with this very different sounding music that you might not expect anywhere else in Hungary? Well, originally the Hungarians lived in this town called Méhkerék, but during the Ottoman conquest, everyone fled for their damn lives, and it kind of remained empty. And then Romanians settled it during the 18th century, and the Romanian Orthodox Church was built, and primary schools were opened, and ladies and gentlemen, we have pretty much a full-blown Romanian village right there in Hungary. Sometimes bass joins in on this, so sometimes you have a trio, 2 violins, and one of the violins will play accompaniment to the lead, and you also have setups of where there's a juice harp, or it's called Jaws harp, and there's a wicked dance from Méhkerék, and Elek has a similar story, the village of Elek nearby. It's Romanian, mostly Romanian inhabitants, even to today, inside Hungary. Here you have a trumpet violin, the Stroh violin, which we've talked about before in previous episodes. Half trumpet, half violin. It's played like a violin with a horn coming out of it, and that's instead of the body of the instrument making the sound, it's coming out of the horn. Of course, if the Hungarians wouldn't have fled Méhkerék and the Romanians would not have moved in, their music would probably sound like generally what the rest of the music we hear in the Alföld, in the Great Plains of Hungary, even let's say, from the area of Gyula, which is again just about 20 kilometers away from Méhkerék. This is generally the type of music you're gonna get, which is very, very Hungarian, traditional Hungarian sounding. Here's the ugros, the olaos from Délaföld. So here you have kind of I would say a migratory force majeure in terms of avoiding the calamity of war and destruction. That's the reason why, Méhkerék, and then something just a few kilometers away, like, the Gyula and that area from there then on in, has this big difference in terms of sound and feel. And this is the typical délaföld music. Interesting to keep in mind, of course, that Hungary is, roughly the size of the state of Indiana in the U.S. So, it's not that big, but you could have these very, very striking differences in the music and dance, even just very, very close geographically to each other. So this is another example that I wanted to play for you, Méhkerék and Gyula, as an example of two places that are so close yet so far. And I have one last grouping I'd like to show you before I leave you today in this episode. And this is, we've kind of talked about this when we talked about Dunántúl, the Trans-Danubian region of western and of southwestern Hungary. And this is, excuse me one moment, there we go. This is, we talked about Lokocsa. Lokocsa is a village right at the Hungarian and Croatian border. This is where they use the tambura extensively, but also the bagpipes. Let's listen to the start of this track. Some live dancing as well that you could hear. You could hear the boots slapping and the clapping already. This is Croatian sounding music, and it's purportedly a kolo circle dance, but there's this very, very Hungarian element to it. So what's going on here? Well, Lokocsa is on the Hungarian side of the Drava River. The Drava River separates Hungary and Croatia. And here, I would call this just dumb luck, There's Croatians living there, but they're on the wrong side of the river to be in Croatia. They're on the north side, so they're stuck in Hungary, so to speak, and close to the town of Pécs. But so they're across the river from their Croatian brothers and sisters because they're on the other side of the river. These people here, though, they have a name for Lokocsa. It's called Lukoviste. That's the Croatian name, and they've kept their language, dance, and singing. And Farkas Zoltán Batyú did a fair bit of research in this area, and Steve Katansky taught a lot of this dancing. There's another previous guest of the podcast. Steve Katansky did a fair bit of teaching of this, including at Stockton Folk Dance Camp. The first one to really focus on this area was Jolan Borbe, who is the wife of the late Dr. Gerd Martin, the name that constantly pops up here. Some stamping here. Here comes the big Kolo. Croatian singing, again from a village in Hungary. And in terms of their dancing, of course, they've, heel clicking and stamping and boot slamping and all that stuff that goes on. And it's not quite your typical Kolo. Hey, men are singing too. One of the Kolos that we heard earlier is called the Csizmaverős, the boot slapping Kolo. Udoranie usare. So Lakocha is really there in the southern part of Dunántúl in the Somogy region almost. Of course, this is a region all on its own, kind of like Méhkerék in that sense. And had it been a little more north or not inhabited by Croatians, the music would probably sound a lot like the rest of Dunántúl. Let's say we go to Somogy-Apáti, Somogy-Apáti, which is again, 25-30 kilometers from there. We'd hear this, typical type of sound like the rest of Somogy. The violin imitating the bagpipe here. This is a nice arrangement from the Zengő band. Various sounds of Somogy in this nice arrangement. If you work your way up to Budapest, then go a little bit north of Budapest, you hit this beautiful place called Szentendre, and you're there, it's like, wait a second, this place feels a little Serbian, you know, and you know, what's going on here? And this is another story, you know, like during the Turkish War, the Serbs were invited to come up to Hungary and to evade the Ottoman Empire, and there was a mass emigration of Serbs, you know, in the early 1700s, late 1600s to Szentendre region, just north of Budapest. So, you know, they left their enduring mark on that nice city. So, you know, it's very interesting how that happens. And this is kind of the so close yet so far type of theme. You know, these are some of these reasons that we get these striking differences and really cultural clashes in a good way. The bagpipe got sick of being imitated and I just wanted to make an appearance. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Tanchaz Talk, which I called So Close Yet So Far, and I hope you enjoyed the excursions all over Transylvania and Hungary. And make sure you sign up on YouTube and keep visiting tanchaz.com for more information and for other episodes. And I'm Kalman Magyar Öcsi, bidding you farewell, and make sure you check in next time. Thank you very much for listening.